For years, Android has been the heart of the smartphone world. From Samsung and Xiaomi to OnePlus, Motorola, Oppo, and many other companies, Android gave people more choices and helped millions of users experience modern smartphones. But today, the Android world is changing. Some smartphone brands that once looked unstoppable are struggling. Others have disappeared from the market completely. Companies that once challenged Apple are now fighting for survival in a business where making money has become much harder. At the same time, one company seems to be moving in a different direction: Google. The creator of Android is becoming more powerful through Pixel phones, artificial intelligence, and deeper control over the Android experience. So what is really happening? Why are so many Android phone makers facing problems? Why is Google becoming stronger while others struggle? And is the Android era coming to an end? Stay with us until the end, as we uncover the story behind the changing smartphone industry. Before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Collapse Files for more stories about technology, business, and the rise and fall of companies. The golden age of Android. When Android started becoming popular, the smartphone world looked very different. Apple had already introduced the iPhone, but Android brought something many people wanted: choice. Instead of buying from just one company, customers could choose from many different Android brands at different prices. Samsung focused on premium phones, Motorola became known for reliable and affordable devices, HTC gained attention for design and innovation, and LG experimented with new ideas. At the same time, companies like Xiaomi, Huawei, and Oppo entered the market with smartphones that offered strong features at lower prices. Android gave these companies a huge advantage because they did not need to build their own operating system. They could focus on creating better hardware, adding their own features, and selling phones to millions of users. This simple formula helped Android become the world's most widely used smartphone operating system. But as the market changed, keeping this success became much harder. The smartphone market became more difficult. One of the biggest reasons many Android phone companies are facing difficulties is because the smartphone market has changed. When smartphones first became popular, millions of people were buying their first devices. New technology was arriving quickly, and many users upgraded to a newer phone every year to get better features. But today, things are different. Most people already have a smartphone that works well. A device that is 2 or 3 years old can still handle daily tasks, take good pictures, and run important apps. Because phones have become more powerful and reliable, many people are choosing to keep their devices longer instead of upgrading every year. For smartphone companies, this creates a major challenge. Fewer people buying new phones means lower sales, and lower sales make competition even harder. The smartphone industry has become a tough race, where companies need strong technology, smart business decisions, and loyal customers to stay successful. The problem with making Android phones. Building a smartphone is much harder and more expensive than many people realize. Companies need to spend a lot of money designing phones, working with manufacturers, managing supplies, creating marketing campaigns, and providing software updates after the device is released. The biggest challenge is that smartphone profits are often smaller than people expect, especially for companies that compete mainly by selling cheaper phones. A company can sell millions of devices, but still struggle to earn good profits because production, research, and business costs are very high. Samsung has been one of the few Android companies that has successfully competed across different price levels. Its strong brand, global reach, and investment in technology have helped it remain one of the biggest smartphone makers. However, many smaller companies have faced serious challenges. Some have left the smartphone market, some have reduced their global operations, and others now focus only on specific regions. The Android market has slowly changed from a crowded competition into a battle where only the strongest companies can survive. The fall of former giants. One of the best examples of how the Android world has changed is the story of HTC. Years ago, HTC was one of the most respected smartphone companies. It created innovative Android phones and played an important role during the early growth of the Android ecosystem. However, the smartphone market became much more competitive. Samsung continued to strengthen its position, Apple remained a major force in premium smartphones, and Chinese companies started offering powerful devices at more affordable prices. Over time, HTC's smartphone business declined. In 2017, Google acquired parts of HTC's smartphone team to help support its own hardware development. Another example is LG. LG was known for experimenting with new ideas and creating unique phones with different designs and features. But in such a competitive market, innovation alone was not enough. In 2021, LG announced that it would leave the smartphone industry. These stories show a larger change. Building successful Android phones has become far more difficult than it was in the past. The rise of Google Pixel. While many smartphone companies were facing challenges, Google started taking a different approach to the smartphone market. For years, Google developed Android and helped shape the mobile experience. But it did not fully control the hardware side of smartphones. That changed when Google introduced the Pixel series. Pixel phones stood out because Google focused on more than just physical features. Instead of competing only with better screens, processors, or designs, Google focused on software, artificial intelligence, and smart features. The company understood that the future of smartphones would not only depend on powerful hardware, it would also depend on how useful and intelligent the software could become. Pixel phones became especially popular for computational photography, where advanced software helps create impressive photos. Google also introduced AI-powered tools that worked closely with its services. The company was not just making another smartphone, it was building a connected experience where hardware, software, and the Google ecosystem worked together. Why Google has an advantage? Google has something that many Android phone makers do not have. It controls the Android experience from the foundation. Google is the company that develops the Android operating system, and it also manages important services that millions of people use every day, including Google Search, Google Photos, the Play Store, and other Google tools. This gives Google a special position in the smartphone industry. Other companies build Android phones, but many of the key features and services people rely on come directly from Google. However, this does not mean Google has already won the smartphone race. Pixel phones still compete against strong brands like Apple and Samsung, and Google's share of the global smartphone market is still much smaller than the biggest companies. But Google has an important advantage. It can combine hardware, software, and artificial intelligence in a way that many competitors cannot easily match. The AI revolution in smartphones. The biggest change happening in smartphones today is not just about better screens, faster processors, or improved cameras. It is about artificial intelligence. Technology companies are working hard to make smartphones smarter and more useful in everyday life. AI can help improve photos, summarize information, translate languages, make voice assistants more helpful, and create experiences that feel more personal for each user. Google has invested heavily in artificial intelligence, and this has made Pixel phones an important part of showing what the future of Android could become. For years, Google's Nexus and Pixel programs have been used to introduce new Android features and demonstrate the company's vision for smartphone software. The next smartphone competition may not only be about who builds the most powerful device. The real question may be, who can create the smartest, most helpful, and most connected AI experience? In the future, intelligence may matter more than just hardware. But is Android really dying? The answer is no. Android itself is not dying. In fact, Android remains one of the most successful operating systems in the world, powering billions of devices across the globe. The real problem is not the technology itself. The challenge is the changing smartphone business around Android. Many phone manufacturers are finding it harder to compete because the market has become more difficult and crowded. Building a successful smartphone now requires huge investments in hardware, software, security updates, artificial intelligence, and long-term support. As a result, the industry is becoming more concentrated, with a smaller number of companies having the resources to compete at the highest level. The old Android era, where many different brands could easily enter the market and challenge each other, is slowly changing. Android is still strong, but the way companies compete in the Android world is becoming very different. The future of Android. So what happens next for Android? The future may belong to companies that offer more than just a smartphone. Today, a phone is not only a piece of hardware, it is part of a larger ecosystem that connects with apps, services, computers, watches, and other devices. Apple has been successful because the iPhone works closely with the company's wider ecosystem. Google is also trying to create a connected experience through Android, Pixel devices, and its many services. Samsung is investing heavily in building its own ecosystem as well. The companies that succeed in the future will likely be those that can combine powerful hardware, reliable software, long-term updates, useful artificial intelligence, and strong customer trust. Simply making another Android phone is no longer enough. The next winners will be the companies that create a complete experience, not just a device. Conclusion: the story of Android is not really a story about the end. It is a story about change. The Android world that transformed the smartphone industry is entering a completely new phase. Some companies that once helped shape Android are no longer major players, while others are fighting to stay competitive. But Android itself is still stronger than ever. The real question is not whether Android will survive. The question is, who will lead the next chapter of the smartphone revolution? Will the winners be the companies that create the smartest software, the best artificial intelligence, and the strongest technology ecosystems? Only time will reveal the answer. One thing is clear: the Android world we knew before may never come back, and companies like Google could play a major role in shaping the future. If you enjoyed this journey through the changing world of technology, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Collapse Files for more stories about the rise, fall, and transformation of the world's biggest companies.